So we're now recording. Over to you, Sylvia.
Okay, great. So I will be covering topics around resume, LinkedIn, LinkedIn profiles, and hiring manager tips, including phone and video interview tips. So that's the agenda, and we'll follow up with the Q&A at the end. So how to write an effective resume and CV. That's the more commonly asked question. I've got a quote there: well-crafted resume shows employers that you are in the right mindset to get back to work. I would suggest to start off with compiling a complete CV, which could be one document that contains everything. We can call it a historical CV. So it could be any length you like. You could put any information so that you're sure that you've got everything there. So, but that shouldn't be the CV you'll be sending to your employers when you're applying for a job. And from there, you then create an application-specific CV. You build shorter and relevant resume that is specific for the job that you're applying for. Now, I will come back to this slide, but I want to show you a sample or example that I put together. I'm not suggesting that this is the format you should follow, but one it highlights what are the key things that you need to put in your CV. So obviously you need to have your name and your contact details. Please do not include any personal information such as your address, age of your kids, your sexual orientation, your religion, etc. So you should start with a summary of your qualifications. Some people call it profile. And it should be very short, in 4 to 5 bullet points. You can write it in a paragraph, but it needs to be most relevant skills for the job you're applying for. So to make most of this section, so you should address the following. So I've put some bullet points. You have to highlight who you are, what can you offer to the company, what are your career goals. So this is the section you will be editing, and you will be tailoring to every job you're applying. Because as soon as someone opens your CV, the first thing is they're going to look into summary to understand how it helps the employers to focus on your best qualifications quickly, and then they would want to read the rest of your CV. Then the next thing you need to put your professional experience. You can call it career history or work experience. It should include your job title, the company you're working for, and location, either country or city. Some people I've seen recently as well, they put their full address. Please don't do that. And then the year. So you should start this with the most relevant, most recent job and go in the chronological order. For 2020 tip, there are different styles people use for CVs. But chronological order CV is the best, rather than written as a bio. Now, so you can carry on, and if you have many jobs that you've been through, they suggest that you have to use primarily most recent jobs and focus on them more, especially last 10-15 jobs. Surely, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be including anything you've done early in your career, but there is a way to showcase. So you shouldn't show any gaps, but there's a way of showcasing it, making sure that everything is captured, but primarily focusing on your last 10-15 years. If you're a graduate or you're a new starter, make sure that you put anything around freelance jobs, volunteering you're doing, internships, anything that will add to track record and your credibility. So in the job, in the description, you should be using some bullet points to highlight your key activities and accomplishments that are suitable for the role. Now, your CV should be written in mostly bullet points, and there's a dilemma whether you should write it in bullet points or paragraphs. People like writing long paragraphs, but you need to remember that many hiring managers also quick to dismiss your resume if it's difficult to read. So if they're saying there's long sentences, they're not even bothered to read it. They'll miss out on the main key accomplishment that you've written somewhere in there. So keep your resume in short and concise bullet points. Use quantifiable accomplishments, numbers if possible. so that you can stand out. And the next thing you want to include is your education. So you'd want to start it with your most recent and all the way up. If you don't have a degree, you could use some professional associations or accredited qualifications you've obtained. And then I've put skills in the end, but it's really up to you whether you want to put your skills after your summary, before your work experience, or even before your education. If your skills are more stronger than your education, showcase it there. Skills and summary section are the two sections that you're going to be tailoring every time you apply for a job. Your work experience, education should remain consistent throughout, but those two that you'll be tailoring for the job. So here you put it is important to have your skills. I know you may have like 20 and 50 skills, but just put the ones that are important and relevant for the job you're applying for. You use the transferable skills. If language is important for the job, make sure you highlight that. Particular qualification, are you Prince 2 qualified, etc. Make sure that you highlight that as well. So I'll go back to my previous slide. So top tips when writing a CV, make sure, I just wanted to actually, before I do that, sorry, when you're writing your job profile, so when you're writing about your accomplishments, the thing you need to remember that you use keywords. So first and foremost, employers want to know you are qualified for the job. So hiring managers will spend most of the time skimming through the resume to identify keywords that match the job description. So make sure that you've included there in the summary of the qualification, you've included in the skills and something that you've achieved and accomplished in your current and most recent job showcases that as well. Now, so to remember to tailor your summary and personal profile and skills section to every job you're applying for, you must make sure that you try to keep your summary short and sweet, and it should not be more than a few sentences or a few bullet points. Another top tip when you're writing about your job work experience, make sure that you have, you use power verbs and you use everything in past tense. For past jobs, if it's your current job, use your current tense. Take keywords from the job description, which I mentioned earlier, keyword search, and use them use them in your summary and skills that are relevant to what you're doing and relevant to your experience. The standard length of the CV in the UK is 2 pages. So make sure that, or try to make sure that you stick to 2 pages, and it should not be more than 3 if you can't. In many countries, it's common practice to include a photo of yourself in your CV, but UK is not one of them. So do not include any photo in your CV. By all means, we'll talk about LinkedIn, because once you've submitted your CV, they will be looking at your professional profile on various platforms. So LinkedIn could be the one where you have your photo. Do not include your age, as I said earlier, date of birth, marital status. It's illegal if the employer asks you, so it's good for you to know your rights. And remove any irrelevant, outdated experience. So those are my top tips for writing effective CV. So Adam, should I just ask questions?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions, Sylvia, in the chat area. The mentors have also been responding, which is great. But just in case people aren't seeing those, let me just ask some of you. So the first one is, there are many professional CV writers that say that you should have your address on the CV, so at the end of the CV, whereas you were saying you don't need your address on the CV. Can you just explain a bit more by what you mean around that?
I would suggest not to use professional CV writers because you should know what is right for your CV, because if the CV the professional CV writer will write for you will not be the CV you can use for every job you're applying for. You should always tailor your CV. So you're not going to go to professional CV writer to tailor it for you. So you need to understand the core basis for your CV. And the address is not important. So long as you show the location, I'm in London, is more than enough. People are, especially nowadays, people are all, there's flexible working around, people working remote. I have not come across ever any situation where people's location made any difference to the role. So I do not advise you to put your address.
Okay, so I'll just add it from my point, and then I'll move on to the next question. So, so I know that essentially what you're stating there is that, of course, put your location as in London, or whichever country you're in or city you're in, because that helps, but not to put the exact details of, for example, your postcode, your exact apartment. And I know from previous experiences of people I've spoken to, etc., that sometimes that information has been used by not recruiters, but people who have access to CV databases for their own ill-gotten gains. So yeah, so for example, if my postcode is 5 letters long, I would just perhaps put the first 2 letters of my postcode to give the recruiter or the hiring manager an idea of roughly where I am in London, but not my whole postcode and not my exact address. And I know that's, Sylvia, what you're referring to. So let me move on. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add one tiny thing here. So Sylvia, I understand completely the address. You don't need to know the street I live in, absolutely. What is occasionally happening is where some customers are saying, we want people local to us. So therefore, the first, what they call the first part of the postcode definitely will support. So as you say, Northampton, London, South Coast, etc., because then it gives people an idea. So I totally subscribe and agree with what you're saying, Sylvia. You do not put your address, but you do put your general location, because that gives them a better idea. Exactly.
Yeah, but also depends. You're right, Gary. It depends on the job. If you are looking for a job as a shop assistant or salesperson, and they want to know that you can be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, etc. It really depends on the job. For more professional, more experienced jobs, it's less relevant. But some jobs where you're physically required to attend and be close to the office, you might want to include that, but not full address again. Like Alim, you were mentioning, maybe the postcode and
yeah.
city.
And in this day and age, my address is Zoom. That's my address, right? Forget where I am. I'm working remotely. But anyway, so let me move us on. So another question is, and I know this was asked on previous sessions as well, how do you address the point around gaps in a person's CV? So either intentional gaps, they've decided to take some time off, or for whatever reason, they have some gaps in their CV. Do they leave it as blank, or what do they put there?
Yeah, so it's important not to leave gaps, because it's going to create questions. So you need to fill in the gaps and be honest about it. So if you had a career break, so you should put you had a career break. If you were on maternity or paternity leave, you should include that there as well. So you need to cover all the gaps and make sure that you're honest about why there was a gap. It's okay for people to take time off.
So Sylvia, can I ask a question then? So where some of us are freelancers and we're obviously in between roles, we don't automatically step from one role to another. How would you propose that be shown on the CV? So let's say I've got a 2-month gap in between assignments.
Yeah, well, freelancers are different. We're talking primarily for permanent roles. As a freelancer, obviously you've got your probably limited company. So long as you're showing that you're working for a limited company, and people understand that you would have gaps between getting different contracts. So but if there is more than a few months, so you've been out for a year, 2 years, you need to cover what have you been doing, because what they're going to be worried, are you still up with latest trends and you understand what's going on? Maybe you've been doing volunteering, maybe you've been doing any other support work in a different project that's not in a company. So I think somehow you need to cover it if it's a long gap.
The other thing I'd suggest is making it clear where you've got a mixture of permanent and contract roles, which I've had in my CV and career, is marking those contract roles as contract. Just putting contract in brackets at the end of the role, or some other way, and that makes it clear where there are one contract after another. Then most people reading that CV would recognise that there would be a gap between them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And sorry.
No, go on, carry on. There are more questions. That's why I was going to move us along, but carry on, Sylvia.
It's okay. We can move to next question. I think we've covered it.
Okay. So another question is, you're suggesting 2 pages. I think it's either on this slide or you have, 2 or 3 pages. So someone's saying, but look, I've got lots of experience. How do I get on 2 pages? What are you on about? I need 10 pages for my CV as an example. Well, I'm joking, and that's not what they've said, but how do you suggest they cram 3 or 4 pages or years and years of experience into 2 pages, for example? What's your view there?
It is quite common, people struggling to cut short, but it is mostly what is relevant for the job you're applying for. That's why I said your complete big CV, generic CV, historic CV can be 3-4 pages. But when you're applying for the job, you know what's relevant when you apply for that job. Is it important for you to say that, oh, you were dealing with a team of people? You should easily cut out. And so what people do, and one of the common things that's in, people take the key responsibilities from their job prescriptions and post it in their kind of accomplishments. But is that relevant? There's so many things that you've done, they're not relevant. So being able to cut out all the relevant information is important. You should put really key achievements, and it should not be more than 4 or 5. If you're saying that I have delivered a multi-billion project and as a program manager, that's already good enough. You then don't need that I have really good stakeholder management skills or whatever other skills, where, of course, by being a great program manager delivering multi-billion projects, you do have those skills. But at the same time, influencing skills sometimes are strong in requirements, so you want to strengthen those. You need to be able to tailor to that. But if your CV is long because you've been working in multiple roles all the time, try to stick to having last 10 to 15 where you focus. The rest you should be able to somehow neatly summarize it at the end so it doesn't show any gap.
Okay, thank you. And so one last question at this point. There are some other comments, etc., that I could raise, but one last question before we move on, and then obviously we'll have more time for questions, is around the best font and size to use. And I know there could be differing views here. So really, I want to focus this on yourself, Sylvia, because I know, as I said, there'll be differing views. From your experience of having reviewed hundreds of CVs, what's caught your eye in terms of being the best font and size to use?
So I'm not going to give you, say, oh, use 12 and Calibri or whatever. So I think what people are trying to do, they're trying to minimize it really to little writing so they can fit into 2 pages. Don't do that. So the CV needs to look really readable. Can I read it easily? Is it not too busy for my eyes? So can quickly someone, because you need to remember that they're all skimming quickly, trying to look for these keywords. Have you done this? Keywords. And if there's too busy, they're going to miss things and not read effectively. So I would say if it's written neatly, make sure that you don't waste too much space, but don't cram it all together. So I would advise to use your own judgment, unless other mentors have other suggestions.
Okay, so let me, so there are other questions coming in, and that's great, keep your questions coming in, but let me allow us to move you on, Sylvia, and there'll be more questions, of course, on your next slide as well, and I'll raise some of these others afterwards. So back to you, Sylvia.
So we're going to talk about the LinkedIn. There's lots of things that you could do to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. But first thing I would start saying that your LinkedIn profile, you need to treat it as your living asset. So what I mean by that, update it constantly. As you have a new accomplishment, you win an award or successfully complete a project, you need to update your LinkedIn profile. So the key things people see when they look at your CV, they look at your LinkedIn, the first thing they see is your headshot. So you make sure that you have the right picture on your LinkedIn profile. So there's a statistic showing that there's 21 times more chances your profile would be viewed with the one that has picture than the one that doesn't have a picture. So you need to have a clear, high quality picture and with a neutral background. There's lots of people using pets, kids, family, they're all great, but please do not use any of that in your LinkedIn profile because it's a professional profile. so you don't have to go and pay for a professional photo. LinkedIn has actually ability. You can just use your mobile to take a picture on a neutral background, and you can edit to the quality you want. And LinkedIn even allows that. So the second thing that's important when someone searches for your name is your headline. Now, the headline, you're allowed to use 120 characters to describe your work, so use them wisely. So you need to include the keywords the hiring managers or recruiters are looking for. You need to ensure that it fully represents you and your work and the common problems your prospects face. Now, so did you also, I want to give you a thing that probably most of you know, but I just want to know that if you do not update your LinkedIn headline, the LinkedIn automatically will take your most recent job title as your headline. So if you're saying that I'm IT manager for, I don't know, Microsoft, and that will be your headline. Is that how you want to be represented? This is a great opportunity for you to use to showcase what you want people to know about yourself. So the other key things I could advise you how to use your LinkedIn headline is customizing it. You can use the industry keywords, say, for example, your program manager, your role in building a transformation project, and something unique about you. So it could be, or unique skill or passion. It could be that you're agile, the way you do things. So just use that as an example. So say, for example, you could have passion in something not related to the job. You might be a great photographer. So if you're a data center technician, you can say data center technician by day and photographer by night. So that kind of summarizes who you are, what you do. So, so that's about the headline. The other tip I missed it, which is customize your URL. So I'm not sure if all of you are familiar, but URL, LinkedIn gives you an option to customize it and use your name and initials to make a short URL that people will be copying and sharing between themselves, which will stand you apart and appear unique. Now, before I move on to summary, I just want to make sure that you understand that when people search for your name, why is it important to have a headshot? So if your name is James, James and whatever surname you have, let's say James Phillips, if someone comes and they've met you at the networking event and they come and search for you on LinkedIn, James Phillips, you don't have a picture, the chances that there will be many James Phillipses without picture or with pictures, and they won't know who you are, and that you'll be missing out people connecting with you. So that's why it's important that they have picture there as well. And the nice picture with a smile also shows that you're very engaging and gives positive vibes about yourself. Anyway, so moving on to summary. Once people identify and have found you, based on your headline and shot, they then click on your LinkedIn to open your profile. The first thing they see is your summary. So the summary should really, it's who you are, should really tell the story. Use keywords to include what you do, who you are, why you do what you do. So it should answer the question, so what? So how can you help the person who's looking at your profile benefit from it? How can you solve their problem? So I've used an example here. If you're a consultant, rather than saying consultant, you could say that you help clients eliminate speed bumps in the workflows and optimize their efficiency. So just an example, but it could be, you could have other creative ways of saying things. So the other thing you could do is introduce a short video, explain who you are, what you solve, how to contact you, and include a compelling description and keywords to describe the video. Think about the elevator pitch that I would say. So then you talk about, in terms of your work history and education, you must make sure that you include all your training, education, and work history to demonstrate the longevity, experience, reliability, and everything that contributed to your success. Now, it is important that whatever you said in your headline, you repeat in your summary, and also it tells the story in your work experience. The more you're consistent and with the way you present yourself, the more you use those keywords throughout your LinkedIn profile, the more you're searchable. So if someone looking for a program manager, a recruiter looking for a program manager based in London, has experience with Prince 2, you'll see if you do that search, there'll be quite a lot of people coming up. But the people that come up on the top, the ones that have used those keywords multiple times throughout their profile. So your work history and education should be really, really aligned with what you're saying on your CV. So make sure that your work history and CV, there is no gaps and it covers and they're consistent. Then the other thing you need to remember to add recommendations. So if you don't have recommendation, you could ask client or colleague or customers, or if you're just graduated, perhaps your classmates who you've run and done project with. List your certifications as well. It positions you as a trusted resource. Put all your skills that you need and certifications in your LinkedIn. Although you may want to make it more tailored in your CV when you're applying for a job, but the full story, who you are, what is your brand, what skills you have, should be all covered in LinkedIn. So that will be about LinkedIn, Alim, and I'll stop here if people have questions.
Yeah, okay. So what I'll do at this point then is there are questions in the chat and I will raise them, but let's actually change tact a bit and see if there are questions that people want to verbally ask. And remember all, you will need to unmute yourself first, but let's just give you all a chance to see if there's anyone who wants to ask a question of Sylvia directly.
Hello, hi, this is Dev. I have a question for Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvia, hi. I'm one of the ones who asked about lots of experience. But the question I have on LinkedIn is, should you use things like available now or hashtag ONO to indicate you're open to new opportunities in your headline or in your description?
So the question was, should you use particular keywords? I wasn't familiar with those words.
Yeah, so for example, some people have got available now or available immediately or available for newer opportunities.
Okay.
And then there are short forms like hashtags ONO, which stands for open to new opportunities, and things like that.
So I've managed recruitment teams, huge teams. So I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with that. Maybe recruiters are familiar, but I've never seen OM and I wouldn't have guessed what it means. So I don't know for particular type of recruitment work, it might be, but so I'm not familiar, so I wouldn't understand. So do use available now if you really, really want to look for a job, but also LinkedIn allows you, rather than wasting that space and putting available now immediately, and Alim may disagree with me because I think Alim's profile says available immediately.
Exactly, completely disagree with you, but carry on.
But the LinkedIn allows you to put yourself as open new opportunities. So if a recruiter searches for you and their list of 20 people come up, they will immediately see under your headline picture, and then it says open to new opportunities, and they know that straight away they can contact you, you'll be available. So it depends. If you really need to use that space for something else that represents what you do and how you can help people, I'd say use that more than available now. But you can use those.
Yeah, yeah, I think that answers it. But joking aside, if I just give my experience here, Dev, and you know, to anyone, so I think I've looked at the profile from LinkedIn's perspective that a recruiter has. So exactly as Sylvia was saying, a recruiter will not need you to say available immediately or anything like that, because they'll use their own special tool where they see the opportunities that people are open to, and they'll find you anyway. I guess where I've got available immediately, and I wouldn't use any acronyms, so I would state it in its full sense, are for those people that don't have the recruiter profile, but are maybe looking to hire a consultant anyway. So this might be, you know, someone else who's a consultant, etc. And that's the reason why I would personally have both. I think that answers the question anyway.
Can I just add, in addition to what Alan was saying here, so yeah, recruiters use it and they have their own specific view, that's fine, but also there's a lot of people on LinkedIn, certainly in your profile, who don't use the recruiter bit, and actually if they're thinking, oh, is so-and-so available, and you've got it written down, that also adds a bit more context, because they see it as a normal person, and as Alan and myself have, and Dev, available now means that everybody knows you're available, not just recruiters. And it may be that you get a recommendation or a referral from someone you've worked with before, or someone who's a secondary connection, or someone else who's on premium. So actually it opens it up to a wider audience, making them aware that you are available.
Yeah. So other questions for Sylvia that you'd like to ask? Anyone else? Remember to unmute yourself.
I have another quick one. This is just going back to your previous slide on CVs. It is about tailoring your CV, first of all, to make it accessible immediately to the human beings, but also a lot of organizations use ATS systems. So I find that it's sometimes very difficult to do both in one CV. So you do need to have a separate CV for the automated systems and a separate CV for presenting to people directly. What's your view on that?
So, but when you say organizations have ATS systems, so I work in-house, and so run one of the ATS systems. So, but remember, when you apply for a job, then your CV gets uploaded to ATS specifically to that job, and it gets viewed by the recruiter, and who's got probably thousands of applicants, and if it doesn't match the keywords, your CV just stays there. So I've seen a lot of people change their CVs and apply multiple times. And when you apply on ATS, it gives you opportunity to actually change your CV or replace it. As a candidate, you could do that. But I would say make sure that it's relevant for the job you're applying. Otherwise, you may have a CV that doesn't match the job description, and recruiter will rule it out, and the hiring manager will never see your CV or your application. Hope that answers your question. If I understood correctly.
Yeah. And then just to note for everyone, so Gary's posted in the chat saying for an ATS scan, go to www.jobscan.co, and they're offering a free trial where it will scan your CV. So obviously some of you may find that beneficial. So that's jobscan.co. I don't know if the .uk is missing from it, or if it is just .co, but I'm assuming it's
no, it is actually just .co. And what they do,
so.
not to gazump it, you get. I'm happy to help anybody who wants it, because there's a really free version which is $5, and then there's another way of getting a month for free. But actually, it takes the job description that you're looking at, so you paste that in. It takes your CV and it tells you where you need some support in the hard skills, communication, soft skills, formatting, and everything else like that. It's really, really good. It's really good.
Yeah. Great. And some of you may not have heard, I would have said it at the beginning probably, or if I didn't, apologies, but the mentors on this course, so there are 4 or 5 of them, they're more than happy to have one-to-one sessions with you through the Slack channel. So, if you're looking for more support around this, including from Sylvia, book some time with them. So look, Sylvia, there's one more question that was asked. It's had some responses in the chat, but I'll ask it of you as well. And I think that's the last one before we move on and see what other questions there are. It's to do with, in Canada in particular, so public sector, Canada, the way that they perhaps apply for jobs is where you need a much longer CV. And it's more perhaps like an RFP format as an example. So in those situations where the CV needs to be longer, but you are advocating 2 pages, but perhaps in another country it needs to be 4 or 5 pages for a particular role. What's your view there?
Sorry, what to do if you need to have a long CV?
Yeah, so if you need to have a longer CV, how do you manage, I guess, for the different roles, from having a version of, say, for argument's sake, a 2-page CV, and sometimes where perhaps, for whatever reason, your CV needs to be 4 pages. How do you manage, if you like, the various different CVs you need, the versioning? And I think you touched on it anyway by having a historical CV and, maybe a bigger CV that you tailor. But do you want to just explain a bit more around that area as to having a historical CV versus them being able to tailor it for different jobs?
I think I don't know why it would require you to have a longer CV unless they've asked specifically, the specifically job requires you to demonstrate particular volunteering skills you have, particular certifications you have, and more elaborate on that. So if you have to talk more to justify your suitability for the role, by all means, that's what you need to have, but you can't just keep putting everything from the job description and copying and pasting into there just to have to tick the boxes. You need a 4-page CV. So most of the time, hiring managers are not bothered to go through your long CV. Now, I've seen some PhD level candidates who do have 10 pages CVs. Okay, we joke when we go interviews. I'm not saying that they don't get into the job, etc. There are some really, really unique skills. This person needs to put 10-page CV because they've written so many studies, and they want to show credibility of different studies and projects and they've done. And again, that goes into appendices, so you can set in as an additional document. It is quite time consuming. You'd be missing out on a lot if you write such a long CV. But I think to pass the recruiters initially, you want to have a short CV. If you're going for an interview, by all means, if you want to show more suitability for the role and you need to justify with more additional information in advance of your interview, to say that here's my updated long CV, just for clarity, that we'll go through. So for application through recruiters, do not use long CVs.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that answers the question. So we're going to move on, but Anneke, I see that you're using the facility which has your hand raised. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, no, just a quick question, sorry. Now, I understand what you was explaining, trying to shorten your CV with a 2-page. What I found very challenging, and I'm sure some of us in here would have found the same thing, most recruiters out there have a tendency of wanting to see your CV, but at the same time needing to add a cover letter to it, or in some cases online, an additional box and describing more about you. So for me personally, the challenge is, do I put all that information on my CV, which obviously could be more than 2 pages, or do I wait and pause and put it on a cover letter, or actually the cover letter still in existence in many cases? That's my question, please.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
The cover letters are, you have to complete the cover letter if it's a requirement for the job. So your CV would already be tailored to the job, assuming you're tailored, but cover letter helps them to quickly identify why you think you're suitable for the role. So just really 1 page, shouldn't be more than that. And some people writing 3 and they think that they have to justify every skill. It should have very simple format, introduction, like 4 paragraphs, really, introduce yourself. In 2020 tip, do not use dear sir, to whom it may concern, etc. Just introduce yourself, and then highlight your best, talk about your relevance and skills and accomplishments relevant for the job, and then highlight your best qualities and explain why you feel you're a good fit for the job. And then just a conclusion, wrap up and thank them for the opportunity, and follow up, that you're looking forward to elaborate more on an interview, etc. So really needs to be short and sweet, and just highlight why you feel you're the right person for the role.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so yep, Sylvia, if we can move on, please.
Okay. We will cover here again, mostly covers what hiring managers are using, and it's relevant for our current situation with everyone working remotely. So probably most of you are attending phone and video interviews if you're looking for a job. So hence I thought that it's important to differentiate from face-to-face interview and prepare for it differently. So on the first column, I put here do's and don'ts for both phone and video interview. So you have to make sure that you choose a quiet spot and you are somewhere where there's no noise, no kids, no pets, and no outside noise, because it will be distracting for yourself. You need to make sure that you prepare and have all the documents. Sometimes people, because it's phone interview, they're like, oh, I'll have my laptop in front of me, and you're searching and all of that. Make sure you've got a copy of your JD, resume, take the list of talking points for interview questions, write them down, and list of important information about the company and your interviewer. So searching your interviewer on LinkedIn, understanding what they're doing, understanding where they will understand how you fit for the job. Sometimes you're interviewed by a person who has no clue about the job, but they're interviewing. So, understanding that will help you position yourself in the right way, how you answer the questions. Do research about the company, understand their values and culture. You have to create some questions around the value and culture unless it comes out in the interview. and look them up on Glassdoor. So it will show how you're prepared, you want the company, and you will feel more organized and comfortable and confident in the interview. And if you're using, if it's a phone interview, make sure that you're sitting somewhere where you've got reliable reception, or also near landline if your phone cuts off. If you're video, make sure that you test your technology, whether it's Skype, Zoom. I mentioned yesterday's session that a lot of companies use HireVue. Not sure many of you are familiar. So it's just the link internal recruiters send for the interviews, but a lot of people have issues. So you could also connect with your recruiter to say, I'd like to test another test called HireVue before my interview to make sure that it connects. And in some countries, for example, Skype doesn't work. So make sure that you tested it. Turn off all the notifications. So make sure that your phone is on complete silent, not buzzing. You don't have any alerts, any sounds. If you're using your computer for video and you don't have any background Skype popping up or anything. So because it will be distracting for yourself. Learn to be comfortable with pauses when you talk. Silence. When you finish talking your point, stop and give your interviewer a chance to talk, to think, and chime in. So do not rush through your point during your conversation. Now, going into phone interviews, I think it's important here. I know people don't see you, but make sure to smile, even if an interviewer does not see you. It makes you friendly. It makes you come across friendly and positive. So have a pen and paper. If it's phone interview, just typing on your laptop all the time and clicking the keyboard is going to be distracting. So don't use the keyboard to type and just use pen and paper to take notes. For video interview, I mentioned already, get familiar with the technology. You can test it with a friend or family. Choose the best space for your video interview. So it could be just behind a photo or white background. So make sure the area that can be seen on the camera are clutter-free. Make sure you have the right posture. You're sitting up straight, and it'll help you to feel professional. And look at the camera more often, because it's important that you look at the camera. You give that eye contact impression that you would be doing if you were in the face-to-face interview. We talked about eliminating distraction and practice ahead of time and double check that you've got everything. I'll move on into next slide because it's part of what we're talking. So those are the key things of the hiring manager looking for: the confidence and you're well prepared, and you've got the right, you give the right impressions, first impression, how you're prepared, so the other thing I want to move in and I want people to take away from this, what hiring managers are looking for, is the way you answer your questions. So SAR model or method is the best way of organizing your answers. Use a story instead of giving standard answers. So SAR is situation, action, result. It will demonstrate your style and how you work to the hiring manager. So you can how to prepare for this type of questions. You need to be prepared for many situational stories that you could tell. So instead of saying that I'm an organized person, you could talk about how can you demonstrate that in a situation. What did you do? You saved the day with your organizational skills. So I've listed some of the key questions that you can search up on the internet. What are the top 10 topics or questions, commonly asked questions? You could prepare yourself for that. Definitely, you could be asked about what are your biggest strengths or weakness. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How would your current boss describe you? What makes you stand out? Why do you want to work here? Tell me about a time. So yeah, these are the common questions. But again, rather than answering with a standard answer, use SAR model. Find a situation. What did you do and what was the result of it, to justify that, oh, you've got great collaboration, team working skills, and you've got effective. You're an influencer, and what did you do to influence to demonstrate that you're an influencer? So some of the other questions I want to highlight. You know, when you start an interview, the hiring managers first thing sometimes start by saying that, tell me about yourself. So please make sure that this is not about just telling about your personal life. This is you talking about who you are, why you're here, what can you do. But don't go, some people, there are different answers. Some people talk about personal lives and some people will go about their CVs. Not just remember that they've seen your CV already, they know what you do, they have questions to ask. If you answer that question going through your CV, you don't give an opportunity to hiring manager to ask questions. And so your interview might finish early and they'll say, thank you, I have no other questions. So you need to allow them to, you need to make sure that it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. So summarize key, why you think you're right and why you're there, who you are. Use the keywords that will help them to understand who you are that's suitable for the role that you're applying for. So they want to know that you're knowledgeable about the job. So the job they're interviewing for, you understand the job and you've got the skills and expertise. And they also would like to know that you understand the organization culture and values. And the other thing I want to remember, I highlighted earlier about asking right questions and preparing the list of questions. It is so important. And I will show you a recent case where we had in my workplace, and there were 20 candidates that's gone through really, these are senior level candidates, gone really comprehensive interview and assessment process. We wanted to have 2 candidates, but we've got 4 strong candidates. And the decision had to be, we can only take 2 to final stage to meet the CEO. Which candidates? They all stand out. So in the end, criteria we used to eliminate the other 2 candidates were the ones that didn't ask the right questions. So we said, some of the candidates said, oh, I've already answered all my questions. So, you know, I'm comfortable, I'm fine. Do not ask questions, oh, when am I going to hear back from you? You know, ask questions that are relevant for the job, relevant for the company's future, relevant for what you want to do. And if you see there are obstacles and what are they doing to prepare and eliminate those obstacles? Ask relevant questions and they can see that, wow, you know the organization, you know the job, you're really interested. So now I'll finish on that note. I hope you found that helpful. And any questions?
Helpful and hopeful as well,
yes,
definitely. So thank you so much, Sylvia. So there may be a range of questions, right? We know that we only have you for another 5 minutes or so. But for anyone who doesn't get to ask their question, as we said, you can book time with Sylvia and the other mentors in one-to-one sessions using Slack. So let me open it up to see if there are any questions from anyone. Please unmute yourself and feel free to ask. Anyone? Okay, so perhaps you have given a comprehensive presentation, everyone's happy, they'll be now busy changing their CVs and LinkedIn profiles. Thank you, Sylvia, thank you all. I'll see some of you at the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.